Welcome back to Orange Chat Reviews, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. So tonight is the Braveheart. Sorry, sick, so kind of had just a mind slip there for a moment. It's Braveheart discussion, and yes, if you can tell in my voice, it is a bit nasally and also congested. So yes, I'm not feeling well, but I wanted this stream to go forward, and unfortunately my panelists will not be joining, so I will be discussing the film by myself unless a couple people who are viewing choose to come in or want to come in. I can easily send the link out. So yes, we are discussing Braveheart, and if you haven't caught on to a pattern of the movies that we are discussing, what themes or the overall theme of these movies, keep watching. You will still get more. But anyway, 1995, a movie or a time when movies were actually very good, and Mel Gibson was churning out movies himself and directing movies. This movie is indeed directed by Mel Gibson. It stars Mel Gibson, Sophie Marceau, Kathryn McCormick, Brian Cox, Brendan Gleeson, Tommy Flanagan, Angus McFadden, John Cosmo, David Oang as Stephen the Irishman. This movie has so many great actors and actresses in this movie. That is actually one of the highlights of this film, is that it has a great cast. I mean, the casting choices of this movie were spot on. Now, this movie is a loose interpretation of the real events of the first Scottish War against the British for their independence. Now, this is also based on the life of William Wallace, who was a Scottish revolutionary for independence for Scotland, who wanted them free from England's tyranny. Now, again, loose interpretation. I will not be comparing what happened between reality and the fiction of the movie. I will be going over the movie's qualities and merits. So let's say hello to the chat. We got Fuck Norris. Good to see you. One of the greats. Indeed it is. This movie is truly a great movie. And a couple other people might be watching. Thank you for coming in. Feel free to leave a comment. Also, folks, jack of all casuals. Freedom! Yep. Let me get my other banner. But yes, make sure that you free that like button. Yes. So if you can, share out the stream. Also, leave a like on this. And, well, if you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe. I can always use some more support. I'm trying to get to 800 before the end of the year. And I'm trying to get to 2,000 watched hours before the end of the year. I'm at, I believe, 1,880 or 13 or watch hours. So yeah, and I'm at 780 subscribers. So I just need 20 more. So if you guys can all help out with the support, that would be great. And I always appreciate any help you all have. You're not my dad. You can't tell me what to do. Elbow cough. How you doing, Marty? Good to see you, bud. So yes, this movie was directed by Mel Gibson. It's it's damn near 3 hours. And you know what? A lot of people say, oh, movies that are 3 hours are not good. It's like, honestly, if the movie can keep you engaged, it actually is good. This movie does keep a person engaged. Now, the events of Scotland's battle for freedom against the British, this movie takes place in the 13th century. In 1280 AD was when the film begins. This film is also a Paramount and Icon Productions. Icon Productions is actually owned by Mel Gibson. So this movie starts with helicopter shot sweeping over the green plains of Scotland. Actually, Ireland too, as well. The cinematography is really good in this movie. The movie was filmed primarily in Ireland, actually, but also in Scotland a little bit. This was done because Scotland, according to the production, was not very hospitable at the time. The people were not friendly enough, as they said. The bagpipe score was a brilliant choice for this film because it really was setting up that this is a Scottish film, and that excuse me, and that this film was made for bringing attention to Scottish history. Hold on 1 second, folks. As I did say, I am sick, so I do need to blow my nose, so just give me 1 second. Hello, Captain Trick. Good to see you. Just 1 second, please. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, these are going to be sticking pretty close to me all night. But yes, it is good to see everybody in the chat. Thank you for stopping in. Make sure that you smash that like button. So yes, the film begins in 1280 AD in Scotland with the narration of Robert the Bruce, declaring that the historians in England will label him a liar, and that history is told by those who have hanged heroes. That's a direct quote from the movie. The King of Scotland had died without a son and that left Scotland open to King Edward the Longshanks, who was a pagan king. And the Scottish nobles fought both each other and Edward for the crown. So then we get into the more common folk. Yeah, no worries. I just had to floss a bit of my donkey jerky. Yeah, that sounds very yikes. Liked and shared out. Thank you, Captain Trek. I do appreciate it. I hope I feel better. Thank you, Jack of all casuals. I appreciate that. Where is this sticky stuff all over? Oh my god. So yeah. So then we get to introduce to the common folk in Scotland, such as the Wallace family and the Faux-Truce trap. After the Wallace family had heard that his friend Mccormick had not come back, he was a Scottish noble, and they were to meet with Longshanks under his banner under a banner of truce. We then get introduced to young William being told to stay home by his father. And his father goes to the McAndrews, actually, not Mccormick, but McAndrews homestead to find many Scottish nobles hanging alongside with the McAndrews family. And as they're checking it out, you then see that young William Wallace is also there. He didn't listen to his father, and he saw children hanging in there. The acting of this movie is well done. This child freaking out when his father tried touching him, and then he runs further in and sees even more. It really does. The kid sold it very well. And it's a Czech sausage. It's like 8% donkey. It's way better than it sounds. Okay, yeah. But yeah, the acting of the kid that played young William Wallace is some of the best acting that I've ever seen from a kid actor, that is, because he truly sold what he was doing. It felt as if this was a kid from the 13th century or talking about or being a part of that world. Mel Gibson, when he does movies, I have yet to see him do a bad movie, to be honest. And I'm talking about a movie that he has directed. He has done some great movies. Passion of the Christ is a great movie. I haven't seen it in years, but I did watch it once. But it actually still was a good movie. Now, further in, after they go home, William's having dreams that haunt him of what he saw. The child that was hanging that he saw looks up in his dream and says his name. Then he wakes up to hear the other families talking about fighting back. His father and brother, chief among them, rallied other Scots to go and fight. And so as he's going by, or as his brother and father are leaving, he's like, I'm going with you. And he's like, are you now? I need you to stay here and look after the home and whatnot and wait for our return. And he tells him, I can fight. And his father leans down and he talks to him. He's like, I know you can fight, but sometimes it's more important to use this, And that's also a repetitive lesson that his Uncle Argyle teaches him after, because he goes out with his friend Hamish, young Hamish, and they do rock throwing, pretending that the British are attacking their homes. And Hamish misses his throws, and William hits both targets with the rocks. And then Hamish, he's like, he just grabs him and just decks him. It's fucking hilarious. And these are little kids. Mind you. Excuse me. So you then see him back home waiting for his family, and they don't return that night. But as he's waking up, he hears people arriving, and he then sees that they're bloodied and battered, but he doesn't see his father among them. So he's automatically knows the worst has happened. And he then he just starts going about his duties with a very detached look on his face. A look that basically says all that he doesn't want to confront the truth of what just happened. But when Campbell, played by who was it that plays Campbell? James Cosmo. He's like, Connor, or William boy, come here, boy. And he turns around, and that's when he accepts that his father and brother have been killed. And so then they have the funeral. Now, this movie has a great way of having characters converse without saying a damn word. This is something that is not easy to do, where simple emotions can speak so many words. And this movie does it so wonderfully, especially between William and the character of Mern, who is his girlfriend and then later wife. And so then one of the quotes, I'm sorry, I know you can fight, but it's our wits that make us men. And that is something that his uncle will teach him as well. Now, the funeral in Young Mern, when the priest was speaking in Latin and William was seeing his father and brother buried, and as they all start to leave, young Mern, she picks a flower and she walks up to William and hands him that flower. She doesn't say anything, but she really does, there's no words in that scene. There's no dialogue between young William and young Mern. But the look she gives him is that basically she's saying, you're in pain, but here's a small little gift to try to cheer him up. But he looks down at it. He sheds a tear. He looks back at Mern. He's broken at this point. Young William just had his entire family killed. So, yeah. So many scenes with no spoken words are amazingly done. Exactly, Marty. And it truly is well done, the acting in this film. Then you see Brian Cox riding up on a horse with one blind eye, and he's like, William, I'm your Uncle Argyle. So then he's eating some food in their house, and he asks William, he's like, after or tomorrow you'll be coming with me. He's like, I don't want to leave. You didn't want your father to die either, but he did, but it happened. Was there a benediction? Did the priest speak about the father? And he starts reciting scripture, and he's like, and William tells him it was in Latin. You don't speak Latin? Well, that's something that we're going to have to remedy now, is it? Or isn't it? So then Argyle gives his own send-off to his brother. And while William is laying in bed, he hears bagpipes playing. Now, the score for this film is top-notch score, especially when it's done with the bagpipes. This film, objectively, is very high quality. And I am saying that on its merits alone. I'm not giving any bias to it. It's just that this score is very moving. It's a very emotional score. The filming of this film just is done in such a way that you feel for each character that is invested in this movie. So he goes out to join his Uncle Argyle, and he's asking, what are they doing? They're saying goodbye in their own way, playing outlawed tunes on outlawed pipes. Back then, because of British rule, they were outlawing a lot of Scotland's they achieved total immersion. Yes, they did. They really did. And that's something that is very hard to do nowadays. I mean, sure, a person can go to the movies, turn the brain off, but movies like Braveheart, you can't really turn your brain off because that movie does get you to think. Seldom that is done on screen. Yeah, it is very hard to do on screen, but Mel Gibson actually did it in a manner that was perfect, or damn near it. Now, William also has a dream before he wakes up to his uncle talking about the outlawed tunes on the outlawed pipes, where he dreams of his father, and his father tells him, your heart is free, have the courage to follow it. And then he sees the other Scotsman playing the tune, or playing the funeral tunes on the pipes, and then the next day you see Argyle leaving with William. And Brian Cox's character, however brief in this movie, was still well done. So then we get to many years later. They don't exactly tell you how many years, but considering the war between Britain, or the first independence war between Britain and Scotland, it was many years of war. However, this movie does not really show just how many years it was. So now King Edward supervises the marriage of his son, and heir. Now, this movie clearly shows the entire movie was perfectly cast. Yes, it truly was. This movie was cast perfectly. Each character was perfectly done. That is definitely true. Now, the son being gay, I do not know if that was actually true. There's no way to empirically prove that. I know that Longshanks' son never had an heir to carry on the throne. He was actually killed shortly after his father died. The wife of his son was the daughter of the King of France, Longshanks' rival. Longshanks, knowing his son was gay and who his lover is, because you see his son looking back at his lover while he's literally being married to the princess of France. And then he gives her a small little peck on the cheek as a kiss that is supposed to basically be the tying bond of this marriage. Now, Longshanks basically had to devise a plan to breed out the Scots during his war council, because he was having a war council, and well, the son didn't want to come down, so he sent his wife. And he's like, the problem with Scotland is that it's full of Scots. I think we should reinstitute prima nocte, or prima nocta. It means first night in Latin. It allows the nobles of of the different areas of Scotland to have any low-born marriage. They will have sexual rights to the wives to basically consummate the marriage for the couple, and hope that the wife was inseminated by the English. That was basically what prima nocta was meant to do. It was meant as a genocidal tactic, or through breeding. So he's like, if we can't get them out, we'll breed them out. Now in Edinburgh, during the Council of Nobles, you see Robert the 17th Earl of Bruce, played by Angus McFadden. Now, Angus McFadden actually, I believe, played in the movie Robert the Bruce that came out in the last few years, and I believe, I cannot state for certainty because I haven't seen it, that movie was an unofficial sequel to Braveheart, because it showed Robert the Bruce's bid for trying to free and rule Scotland. Now, let me get back to my things here. Yep. He was the lead contender of the crown. Robert's father is said to be in a different place, but he's actually kept in Edinburgh in a tower because he has leprosy. And Wallace then returns home and attends the local festivities, which was a marriage between the character Tommy Flanagan and his character's wife. Now, when he gets there, Mern, now growing up to be the beautiful Kathryn McCormick, haven't seen it yet. Exactly. So, hold on one second, folks. Mern, played by Kathryn McCormick, she immediately sees William as he gets off his horse. And William is played by Mel Gibson, and he's enjoying the festivities, but he then sees Mern and he starts going toward her. Well, he's stopped by Brendan Gleeson, and he's like, you dropped your rock. Test of manhood. You win. Excuse me. And so he's like, you win. While the British aren't. So he's like, no. British won't let us train with weapons, so we have to use rocks. He's like, that's fine. And so they then have their little rock throw. And he's like, I think the measure of a man's heart is not in his arm, it's in his head. And which is something that his Uncle Argyle told him, because during the time that he was listening with his Uncle Argyle to the pipes, William took his uncle's sword and he tried lifting it. And he's like, first, learn to use this. Then I will teach you to use this. So then Hamish, who hasn't been announced as such yet, smacks or punches William, and William immediately recognizes him. He's like, Hamish. So then they do the rock throw, and he's like, can you do it when it matters? When in battle, when it matters. He's like, so then he goes and stands, and Hamish's father is up there. He's like, he'll move. Don't you worry, he'll move. And then Hamish throws and misses him. So then what Mel Gibson does in the scene is actually pretty funny. He's like aiming, and you think that Hamish reacts to that. He's like, what is this man doing? Throws the rock, and hits him square in the face. They may take my Wi-Fi, but they'll never take my. Oh my God, Soul Assassin! That is so great. That is freaking hilarious. I should have remembered. Yeah, exactly. That's the next rock. So he helps him up, and he's like, "I should have remembered the rocks. Your voice, or the voice, is a little raspy, or getting sick, man." Yes, Soul Assassin. Actually, I've been sick, and I'm actually getting a little bit better because I actually left the area where I'm sick from, or that I got sick at. My niece and nephew haven't been feeling well. They had the sniffles, and I ended up catching what they had. So yeah, I am sick. I'm a little raspy. I'm sorry about that. But yes, I got Vicks here, Vapor Rub. I'm going to be putting that on my chest. I'm going to be freaking probably blowing my nose throughout the entire freaking night. It's going to be a rough or a tough slog. But yeah, thank you for caring, bub. So moving on, he then actually tries to go up to Mern. And the chemistry between Mern and William is undeniable. These two don't even have to say anything to each other, yet their eyes and their expressions speak volumes. But before anything can really happen, the English lord comes in and invokes prima nocta. Now, Tommy Flanagan, he is a great actor, and you could tell who Tommy Flanagan is. He's he's an actor with a huge round scar by his cheek. He's played in movies like Alien vs. Predator, Face Off, Braveheart. He played in Smokin' Aces. He's played in so many great movies. And a lot of people ask him, what is that scar around his face and whatnot? It's actually he was in a bar fight. And that's the reason why he has that scar. But yes, Tommy Flanagan, he doesn't like this, and nobody should like this. I mean, how would you like Glasgow Smile? Yeah. Now, how would you like it if somebody basically came in and said, I'm going to bless your marriage by fucking your wife for you? That's basically the essence of what prima nocta is. I'm blessing your marriage by taking your wife into my bed. And I'm going to deflower her instead of you. That is like the ultimate insult. So yes, it's very clear that Tommy Flanagan's character was not happy with it. And so the knights pulled their weapons, and you actually see a rubber sword go literally like the blade goes like this against somebody. And it's like, yikes, man. And the bride, his wife, basically calms everybody down. She goes in, she pushes the blade away, and they actually allow him to do it, or allow her to do it. She puts her hand on him, and these people are calming down. She goes up to her husband and basically you can't hear what she's saying, but reading her lips, she's like, I'll be okay. I love you, and I will be okay. So you see her ride off with the noble, and nobody's happy about this. So then later on, Wallace is in his home, and it's raining, and his home has become a ruin, essentially. The roof needs to be restitched with the hay and whatnot. And so he decides to just go out riding, and he ends up going to the Mccormick's home looking for Mern. And then he rides off with Mern, which is pretty freaking hilarious. And the score is so beautiful as he rides off with her. The score is known as, I believe, or The Secret Wedding. And when he talks with her and he kind of shows off that he knows different languages, and he actually learns to teach her how to read and whatnot, let it be known that I totally support the husband who got revenge on that noble. Exactly. I mean, that was like one of the best kills in the movie, to be 100% honest. Um, sorry. So yes. So McClanick then comes on after or during this night between Mern and Mel. How you doing? Or how you doing, Tim Possible? Good to see you. I'm going over Braveheart. Yep. Thank you, Soul Assassin. It is true. That theme is so beautiful. I actually am going to be putting it on my instrumentals list later on. You sound like you got that Lumberjacks variant. Yeah. Thanks, Marty. Thanks. But yeah, so after he brings her back, he hands her something. And she opens it, and it's the same flower that he gave her, flattened to preserve it. And she looks down and it, smiles, and then she looks up at him with sudden realization that that flower that he handed her all those years ago, he kept. And that actually tells her, yes, he truly did care. So while he's stitching his house roof the next day, McClanick and Campbell come by, as well as a couple others, and they're like, William's like, sir, I should not have taken Murren out. He's like, McClanick's daughter is another matter. We come to fetch you for a meeting. What kind of meeting? The secret kind. And he tells him, he's like, I've come here not to fight. I want to raise a family. I've come here back to Scotland to raise crops. And God willing, a family. And he tells and he doesn't want to fight. He's actually doing his best to stay out of it. And McClanick tells him, he tests Wallace. He's like, you really don't want to do it? No. And he tells him, if you can prove it, I'll let you court my daughter. I thought I just did. Nope. Or until then, my answer's no. Orange Hat went to the school of Christian Bale voice acting. Where is he? Yeah, I know, right? That was terrible, actually. I could actually do a lot better with my voice not raspy like this. I'm Batman. Although that I actually did very well. But anyway, he's like, I thought I just did. And he's like, no, William, no. And it's just a back and forth of no, you know? No, you know? So then, later on that night, he actually spirits Mern away to propose to her. And this is a thing that goes on over the next few days. He actually marries Mern in secret so that he wouldn't have to share him or share his wife with an English lord. So he tells her, I love you, always have. And she agrees that she'll marry him. And so then they get married in secret and they consummate it. And yes, there is nudity in this movie. There isn't overt sexual action in this movie, but there is nudity in this movie that suggests that sex or indeed does happen. And so then the next day you see Mern helping her husband with his kilt. And then you see happy times between Mern and William. Hold on one moment. And the chemistry between the children actors. Hold on one moment. I'm sorry, folks. Just mutate and get it over with. Yeah, I know, right? OH, stop tubbing, please. Yeah, I know, right? I will get through this and then I'm going to rest. But yeah, the chemistry between Mel Gibson and Kathryn McCormick, how they can speak volumes without saying a word to each other, but through smiles and through their eyes meeting and whatnot, it just speaks volumes. How they are telling each other that they love them with just merely looking at each other. And this really does work. But unfortunately, this marriage does not last, as while they're at a small market, Mern is getting food for her family, and there's a drunken guard who goes to try to rape her, and she defends herself, bites his face, and then William comes in, saving her, but he puts her on a horse, and she gets smacked in the face with a polearm, and he says, "I'll meet you at the Grove." Well, he gets back to the Grove after escaping the guards that were chasing him. However, she's not at the Grove. She got caught. And the noble of that particular area, which was not the noble of the one that took Flanagan's wife, but a different noble, basically tells him an assault against the king an assault against the king's men is an assault against the king himself. And Mern's face, when she is tied up to that pole, she's looking for her husband. She's praying he comes. She Rittenhouse that guard. Yeah, I know, right? And it is so tragic when she is looking, knowing that he's not coming. So then the guard goes right up to her and slits her throat. And she dies slowly, still looking for her husband. But then succumbs to her death. So then the noble says, "Let the scrapper come to me." So we then see Wallace come back. And the nobles literally lay a trap for him. The garrison at that area is waiting for him to come back, knowing he will, because they just killed his wife, but unbeknownst to them, they didn't know that was his wife. So, we then see Wallace riding in, and the way that the cinematography shows it is you see him, a little bit of Wallace in one angle, a little bit in another angle, and you see the other soldiers walking around to get into right positions and whatnot. And then when one of the soldiers come up, he puts his hands behind his back. He shows them that they're empty and whatnot. And then he pulls a nunchuck-like weapon out from behind his hair and just smashes the dude's face. He then pulls a deer horn knife out and stabs another guy. And we then get a bunch of other Scots joining in. And then after they all take the garrison, William is just pushing the shit or beating the shit out of this noble, flailing him around when he's looking the kid in the face. Yeah. It's kind of like, if it's not really a nunchuck, it's two pieces of wood that are latched together with a chain, with just one chain link like this. And that's basically how it's used. It's kind of like a flail, yeah. Going ape shit on the guards and the noble. Yeah, exactly. You could see the scene right here. Thank you, Soul Assassin. And so then, how coldly Mel Gibson plays this scene is truly fucking brilliant. He just walks up to him, he puts the knife up to the dude's neck, and he just slits his throat. Without saying a word, he does it so coldly. And after he walks off, all the other Scots start chanting Mccormick, and it's actually spelled McCallish, but it's actually Mccormick, which also translates into Wallace. And he becomes a figure that they start to rally behind. But then we get to Mern's funeral, and you see how broken the family is. It was most likely some sort of farming implement. Yeah, I'm guessing it was. Any man would have done that. Exactly. Or would have done that. Yeah. So the funeral for Mern is so freaking heartbreaking because you see William there, plus her parents at the head of that plot. And Mel goes right up to her, or right up to McCormick, and he gets on his knees and bows his head. He's seeking forgiveness. But he's also relenting to whatever punishment that McCormick would do. Whether McCormick sends him away, he would accept that, or if he is forgiven, that is something that you did. If you brought because of his deceit, his wife, or because of Wallace's deceit, Mern died. And so he felt that he should have accountability for the blame. But instead of, or you see McCormick, he puts his hand down over Mel's head, puts it in a fist, and it's shaking. And then he puts his hand on Mel's head. Basically, I understand what you've done, and I forgive you what you've done. And that is something that is very profound in this movie. It shows that they are ready to grieve as one. So, after tending to Campbell's wound, because Campbell actually got hit with an arrow when they were fighting against the first garrison, I love how they do it. They have them heating up a poker, and you see his son Hamish. He's like, you do it. I'll hold him down. And he hands it to Tommy Flanagan, and Tommy Flanagan grabs a guy who's running around. He's like, no, you do it. I'll hold him down. And so he's like, come on, boy. Just pour it in. Don't waste a good whiskey. And so they pour it, and he's like, yeah. And then they hit him with the hot poker. And you see him scream, and then they let him go. And the guy's like, I'm sorry. And then he punches him out. And he's like, oh, he'll be feeling that in the morning. And so then they have their merriment and whatnot. And while they're doing it, or while, hold on one second, folks. Well, sorry about that. Dan Blackroyd, good to see you. So then they get visitors from other Klansmen, and they tell them, we heard that you guys are sticking it to the English. We want in. William says, no, go back to your families. He's like, or, yeah, you did for a second there, Jack. Sorry about that. I heal you with my magic powers. But anyway, and he tells him, go home. And he's like, we do that, there's nothing to go back to. They'll come and burn our home, so we're in this as well. So then they sack another garrison. And I love when the noble, he's like, I have 100 people or 100 men who will be returning now. Yeah, were they dressed like this? Yeah, it was more like 50. And so that he then turns to Flanagan and he's like, make it quick. So Flanagan removes his helmet and he's like, do you remember me? And the noble is truly terrified at this moment. He's like, I never harmed her. I would not bring her to harm. And he's like, it was my right. And he's like, yeah, it was your right. But I'm here now claiming my rights as her husband. And he beats him to death with an actual flail. And then he spits on him. And it's like, oh, shit. So then Wallace makes a statement. And he tells him, he's like, the rest of you will be left alive and go back to England and tell them Scotland's sons and daughters are theirs no more. Scotland is free. And then he turns and leaves and just goes, burn it. Lesson to be learned, never take advantage of another dude's wife. Exactly. So then we go to Longshanks in England, where he looks to his son to see how he would handle Wallace. And his son is like, he is a brigand, nothing more. Have the local magistrate arrest him and punish him accordingly. Well, he then strikes his son because his son is a weakling and an idiot. And he's like, Wallace has already killed the local magistrate. And so I'm leaving for France to press our rights there. You, my son, are going to quell this rebellion by the time I get back. And so his wife goes up to him to try to comfort him and try to wipe the blood from his mouth. And he's like, get away from me. And then he walks off to convene his little war council, which are flamboyantly dressed. Just fucking weird. But anyway, the British start retaliating by burning villages, and they're routed by Wallace's growing army. And then Robert the Bruce visits his father, telling him about Wallace's rebellion. And then he's told by his father to embrace the rebellion from the north, but condemn it from the south. Basically, political maneuvering. Now, as Wallace continues his rebellion, the gay prince with his flamboyant war council, is just walking around in their robes. Hello, Shock Skywalker. Good to see you. Mr. Roy, good to see you. And sorry about that. Let me get another drink. So then the French handmaiden to the princess, or to the queen, is or the Princess of Wales, rather, not the queen yet. She tells him after he convenes his war council for the first time, she's like, I hope your husband goes to meet this Wallace and finds him, and then you will be a widow. So then, after his war council is failing, in their pathetic outfits, you see, the handmaiden talking to the queen again, or to the princess, and how Scotland is in chaos and that the king will basically kill them. It is, and whatnot. And so she then tells the princess of Wallace's motives for his rebellion, of how Wallace only started doing this to avenge his wife. So my question is, how did they realize that this woman, or how did they know about this woman and whatnot? But it is later answered that they didn't. So then we get to the volunteers and the discussion of how to handle a cavalry of heavy horse. He's like, we'll build spears twice as long as a man. Twice as long. Aye. Well, some men are longer than others. And then you hear Campbell with a great insert. He's like, your mother's been telling stories about me again, eh? And then you get volunteers, a guy named Faldrin who literally kneels before Wallace. And he's like, I've come here to fight and die for you. Stand up, man. I'm not the bloody Pope. And then this is Stephen. And Stephen just starts laughing and whatnot. And it's just so great. He's like, this cannot be William Wallace. I am prettier than this man. The Stephen Owang, or the guy that plays Stephen, David Owang, is so freaking great. And how he's like, yes, Father, I'll ask him. And so he's like, is your father a ghost, or do you converse with the Almighty? To find his equal in life, an Irishman is forced to talk to God. And then they call him an insane Irish, and he pulls a blade. And they had previously checked him for arms. So he's like, good enough to get a blade behind or through your guards, old man. And so they're like, that's my friend. You're threatening Irishman. And to answer your question, yes, you fight for me, you get to kill the English. Excellent. Stephen's my name. And I'm the most wanted man on my island. But I'm not on my island. I know, right? And then they ask him, he's like, your island? Do you mean Ireland? Yeah, it's mine. And he just starts smiling. The dude is freaking comedy gold. I'm telling you right now, he's comedy gold. Stephen or David Owang. So then there's the next scene of how, and I love how the scene is played. It shows Wallace hunting a deer. And you see Stephen tracking Wallace, and you think that he's going to betray him. But then you also see Faldrin in the woods as well, tracking Wallace. And then you see Stephen make his move, getting ready to throw a dagger, and you think it's at Wallace. But then you see Faldrin in behind Wallace getting ready to kill him, but the dagger goes past Wallace and into Faldrin, and they are looking crazy. He's like, sure is, the Lord told me that to watch your back. I never did like this guy. He wasn't right in the head. And then he pulls the dagger off and goes away. And then you see Wallace just look up, and he's like, hey, this guy's not so crazy after all, you know? Now, that scene was truly great. So then we get the runners from telling that the Highlanders are coming down to join the rebellion. And then we get to the Battle of Stirling, where the nobles want to negotiate, and Wallace ends up taking over the army with his blue painted, and then we get the speech of how you can run, live for a day, maybe for a little longer, but wouldn't you give all that up for a chance, just one chance to tell them that they may take our lives, but they will never take our freedom? Now, if my voice was good, I would have actually given that in a more flamboyant tone. Unfortunately, my voice, as you all can clearly hear, is not up to snuff for that. But it is one of the best freaking lines in the book or in the movie. So then we get to negotiations with Lachlan, Mornay, and Craig. And they're willing to talk it out, but Wallace offers impossible terms. And he goes up and he's like, And they're like, you disrespect a banner of truce or a flag of truce. He's like, from his king? Absolutely. Because he knows that the Highlanders have a person called Connor McLeod. Here Wallace is a giant that shoots thunder from his ass, yeah. And he's like, from his king? Absolutely. So then they have, so then they return back after no terms are given. And you see one Scot go forward, lift the kilt. There can be only one, yeah. And so then you see all of them start lifting their kilts, basically taunting the English. And they call for their archers and they start shooting. And I absolutely love the interaction between Stephen and Wallace when they put their shields up and one arrow goes through one of the shields. He's like, the Lord tells me he can get me out of this mess, but he's pretty sure you're fucked. And he laughs at him and whatnot. It's so great. Then you see them mooning them with their, or then you see the freaking everybody's ass out of their kilts and whatnot. It's so freaking great, that entire scene. So after the very bloody and gory battle, you see that Campbell loses his hand. He gets knocked down and another Englishman chops his hand off with an axe. And the end of the bloody battle, the Scots all start rallying behind Wallace, not the nobles. So then later on, Wallace earns a title as High Protector of Scotland by the nobles. And the nobles aren't happy about it. They're like, we can't do anything about it because they care more about him than they do us. It's the greatest Scotsman yet ever. Yes, indeed, he was. And he is also very messed up. Surprised that he didn't get a role in this film, to be completely honest. But anyway, then the nobles start asking Wallace, who will he throw his weight behind, or who will he endorse for the crown? And then they all start squabbling amongst themselves. And Wallace and his men start to leave. And they're like, where are you going? And he's like, I'm going out to fight the British. We can't, or how are we supposed to unite if we're fighting amongst ourselves? Be right back. Okay, then. Thank you. And so then Robert the Bruce talks with him, and he's like, you got to parlay with the nobles, or without them, we'll have nothing. And Wallace tells him, men don't follow titles, they follow courage. And he even tells Robert, he's like, I know of your claim to the crown, and you have the better claim than many. If you would just show that courage, men will follow you, and so would I. And so then we also hear that Wallace does also intend to invade England. So Sean thought he would be Wallace. Mel said no. Yeah. Oh, really? That was interesting. Well, also, Sean Connery was a lot older than what William Wallace was meant to be portrayed as. So, then we get to the invasion of England, and Longshanks returns to his son's failure after the battle where you see the king's nephew talking about his sodomite cousin not allowing him to have any more. Oh, it was a joke. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah. Robert the Bruce was so well done. He's so torn to make a decision because of his father and realizing he was so wrong. Exactly. Robert wanted to believe in what William believed. He believed it, or he was really taken by Wallace's passion. But his father kept on steering him away from that because he realized that passion will get you killed. Passion rules reason, for better or for worse. Now, then we get Longshanks coming back, and the head of the king's nephew is delivered to Longshanks. And Longshanks, or Wallace, is sacked York. So Philip, Edward's son's lover, is like, oh my God, we'll stop him and whatnot. And I love how Longshanks, he reacts. He's like, who is this man who thinks or who believes I need his advice? And so his son chimes in. He's like, one second. He's like, I have stationed Philip as my head counsel. He's like, is he qualified? And he's like, I'm well-versed in military tactics, sire. And so he's like, are you? So then he throws the dude out the window saying, how would you handle the current situation? And he throws him out the window. And you see his son's horrified reaction. And his son then pulls a knife and tries to kill his father. And his father sees it and he just belts him aside. And he's like, and then he has to decide who is he going to send to meet with this brigand Wallace. Not I. If I get killed, it will only spur him on to take over the whole country. And not my gentle son. He'll be even more enticed to do so by seeing him. So who do I send? He ends up sending the Princess of Wales, Marceau's character, or Sophie Marceau's character. And she learns that, or during the meeting, tosses that dude out the window. Yeah, that was truly a great scene. Think Robert the Bruce's dad had leprosy. Yes, he did. That was why he was isolated all the time. And so she negotiates with Wallace under a flag of truth. He's like, I am well aware of Longshanks' notions of peace, where he hung nobles and those after they flew a flag of truce, he lured them in and killed them. And they're like, what about the king's cousin? Wasn't he innocent? No. That man hung children and women from the walls of York. So I had no problem killing him. She's really taken with Wallace, especially after one of the advisors tries speaking to her in French, and Wallace tells it or counters right back speaking French, because the guy calls him a barbarian that lies, and he's like, I do not lie, but I am a savage. Or in French, and then he tells him in French, he's like, or in French, if you please, or if you want. Basically letting them know that they can't really talk in a different language because he knows other languages. The second she saw William, the humidity in the tent rose 1,000%. Oh yeah, definitely, because she was actually very taken with Wallace, and she did like him as well. But then again, she was also innocent at the time. So then, when she returns to England, admitting that Wallace did not or rejected the terms, Longshanks had already decided to send his armies to Edinburgh to get behind Wallace. And his son complains. He's like, even if you do all this, it would take them weeks to get here. And he said, I dispatched them before I sent your wife. So then Edinburgh falls to the British, and Wallace is forced to withdraw from Edinburgh or from York. So then the nobles want to negotiate again, and Wallace calls for the clans to be united under Robert the Bruce. He's like, unite us. If you unite us, I can finish this fight. However, his father orders Robert the Bruce to betray Wallace. And then we get to the Battle of Falkirk, where the nobles abandon Wallace and the Scots lose. Wallace discovers that Robert the Bruce betrays him, and he's just broken. But during that battle, when the Irish turn on England, That is so great because Stephen's like, I didn't believe it was possible, but yes, the Irish are coming down as well. But you don't have to worry about them. They'll fight for us. And he's like, you sure? He's like, I told you, it's my island. So then we see the brutal tactics of Longshanks, where he sends in the archers to fire on all the people on the field, including his own men. He's like, won't we hit our own men? Yeah, we will, but we have reserves. Attack. So when they start to ride off, Wallace sees us and he chases after him, and then Robert the Bruce is forced to defend himself and halt Wallace. So Wallace, basically, after he sees Robert the Bruce, was telegraphed. Yes, when he sees that it was Robert the Bruce that betrayed him, it broke him. He was just sitting there waiting for somebody to kill him. And then he's like, you have to get up. You have to get up. And then Stephen comes in and he's like, get him out of here now. Get him out of here. And it was just so freaking heartbroken. So Campbell also got killed in that battle, and Robert the Bruce hates himself, and he confronts his father. He's like, what you did will help you secure further position. Longshanks is very Machiavellian. He would hurt his troops to kill his opponent. Exactly. He didn't care who was killed as long as the end result favored him. So then he tells me, he's like, you will have land titles for this. He's like, land, titles, power, men, nothing. I have nothing. And he's like, all men betray, all men lose heart. I don't want to lose heart. I want to believe like he does. And I took it from him when I betrayed him. And now I have nothing. And this is basically where he is starting to splinter from his father. He still listens to his father, but he's realizing that his father is not in it for Scotland, or is willing to do a deal with the devil to save Scotland instead. So you also see Robert walking among the dead later on at Falkirk on the fields, as other people are attending to look for survivors. Then Mornay is in his bed dreaming of Wallace riding up with him with a full face blue and hissing like a ghost. And when Wallace just strolls right in on a horse into his room, sacrificing the peons to achieve a goal. Indeed. Example of something that has been happening for ages. Exactly. And so he just crushes Mornay with a hammer, or with a chain or a ball and chain. And that scene was well cut. However, you can see when just before he strikes Mornay, that it's Mornay, and after he strikes Mornay, you can see that it immediately is cut to a dead doll, because you also see that the character of Mornay's head shrunk. So then he has to dive his horse out a window, and that horse is just so fake because how it fell into the water. And yeah. So after that, Craig is talking with all the other nobles eating at Robert's home, and they're all having dinner and whatnot. He's like, don't know who it will be or who's going to be next. And he's like, and Robert said, he's like, maybe you, maybe me, doesn't matter. And Craig actually is like, I'm serious, Robert. And then Robert slams his fist down, so am I. He's scared to death because how Wallace is turned on nobles. Wallace is killing those nobles who wronged him. He basically feels that the nobles are useless. And then as Craig goes to take a bite of bread, you see the blood drip down, and then you see Lachlan fall down with his throat slit in the middle of Robert's hall. So then, as the legend of Wallace grows throughout Scotland, Longshanks has to try to trap Wallace using the Queen again and a flag of truce. He sees through the trap because the Queen warns him about it. And you also see, or this also leads to the consummation of, or the conception of the Queen's child. Wallace basically, or she is in love with Wallace, and she and Wallace end up fucking, and yeah. So after that, you also see Robert's illness starting to, or Robert's father's illness progresses, as does Longshanks. And then Craig then goes up to Wallace and convinces him to go to Edinburgh, where he can unite the clans proper. Now, nobody trusts the nobles, but when Robert the Bruce had Mern's embroidery, which he found or which was on the field of battle, you see that it comes from Robert the Bruce, or they tell him that it comes from Robert the Bruce. Robert's planning on doing this. He really is planning on keeping or uniting the clans. But Craig actually made a deal with Longshanks to have William turned in. Now, Hamish thinks it's a trap, and it is indeed a trap. And Robert was not apprised of the plan that became a trap, so the nobles betray him. And then Robert disavows his father, basically telling him, you're nothing but a dried up old man. And we see that William is charged with high treason. Now the Queen, or then we get to the Queen basically giving Wallace a tonic to ease his pain during the torture. And you get the very famous line, every man dies, everyone dies, not everyone really lives. So then she tries to plead to the king, and this scene is truly great. No romance words from OHR, just straight up words. Yeah, I know, right? Well, basically, yeah, she's in love with him, and he gives into that passion. And you see her walking very happily, but she also runs her hands over her body, basically, essentially saying, yeah, she's pregnant. So when she goes to plead with the king and say, why don't you get the respect of your people, he rejects her without saying a word because he can't. He actually lost his ability to speak because of a sickness. And she then looks at her husband and she's like, and you, that notion, or the notion of mercy is as alien to you as what, or as the notion of love. So then she tells the king that she's pregnant with a child that's not of his line, and that her son, or in that his son will not stay on, or that his son will die shortly after. He will not stay on the throne. So then we get to the torture, and the torture scene where you see him hung, racked, and then disemboweled. And you see that he is looking at a child. They have children there. And then even the people there start to call for mercy after a while because they've seen that this man has endured enough. But when he tries to speak and they let him speak, he, instead of mercy, he yells out freedom, which they then choose to just finally end it. And when he turns, he sees his friends, but he also sees Mern walking behind them and smiling at him, basically ready to reunite with. And then Wallace was dismembered, and this actually happened in history. His body was dismembered as a warning to anybody else of what the price of high treason is. So at the end, when Wallace is dead in the year 1314, Robert the Bruce chose to fight instead of receiving his crown. He chose to basically say, fuck the endorsement from the British. I will, or you all bled with Wallace, now bleed with me. And then you see Hamish throw Wallace's claymore, his massive sword, out to the battlefield so that they may fight, and you see them charge. And then you hear the narration of William, in the year of our Lord 1314, the Scottish Scottish patriots fought and gained their freedom. Now, this will lead us to the scores. Objectively, this movie is about a 9 out of 10. There are slight mistakes, the rubber sword, the fake horse, some other things here and there where you could tell certain things are fake. Subjectively and moviegoer-wise, this movie is an absolute 10 out of 10. I really loved this movie. I really thought it was great. It truly was a thrill to watch. I enjoy it every time I watch it. So anyway, folks, I am going to start getting to bed because I gotta get my throat under or my voice back. I will probably not be doing a lot of videos over the next few days. I want to try to get my voice back and whatnot. So the next movie discussion will be Assassin's Creed. I'm looking forward to that one because I will be looking forward, or I will be. Oh, thank you, Soul Assassin. The movie score, or a music score, is 20 out of 10. Yes, it truly is. Yeah, I sound like shit. Thank you, Marty. I love you too, brother. But yes, I'm gonna take a break from YouTube, let my voice heal a little bit, take some honey and lemon orange. If I had some, I would. But thank you all for tuning in. Soul Assassin, Marty, Jack of all casuals, Shaq Skywalker, everybody who joined, Tim Possible, Futch Norris, and I know that Rough Girl also had a comment earlier, but unfortunately it didn't last. Captain Trek, thank you all for joining and for listening in. Folks, you all have a good night. Go over to Jade Shadow's channel. She will be doing Talk Nerdy with us. I will not be able to attend that because I'm going to take a pill that's going to basically knock me out. So you all have a wonderful night. Thank you so much for tuning in. Feel free to try to check out some of my playlists to kind of get my watch hours up. I'm trying to get to 2,000 before the new year. Share my channel out to friends who might be interested in trying to get to 800 before the new year. If all the support that you are showing me is helping, and I do appreciate it, and I am so humbled by all of your support. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it. Thank you so much for tuning in. You all know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe, share, all that jazz. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. What did you think of Braveheart? Did you like it? Did you not? What was your favorite parts? Let me know all that, folks. Anyway, this has been Orange Hat Reviews.